Ethan never thought his life would take such a sudden and strange turn. One moment he was a simple engineer on Earth, fixing machines and living quietly, and the next he was told he was to marry a Zalari woman, one who was 30 years older, a commander feared across galaxies. The news had come from the Earth-Zalari Peace Council, a body meant to ensure that humans and Zalari coexisted after decades of war. Their solution to maintain peace was simple in theory but terrifying in reality: interspecies unions. Ethan had heard rumors about the Union Pact, but he had never believed it would reach him. He was young, unremarkable, and quiet, known for his skills in mechanics rather than politics or battle. But the council had selected him anyway. When the officials arrived at his small apartment, their uniforms gleamed under the soft lights, and they carried the weight of authority in every step. "You are to marry Commander Saren of the Zalari," the lead official said. His voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. "This is not optional. Your life and your world may depend on it." Ethan opened his mouth to protest, but no words came. He had known diplomacy and law, and he had never been involved in war. Yet here he was, being sent to a world he did not know, to live with a woman he had never met, 30 years older, and feared by her own kind. The journey to Zalari space was long, and Ethan spent it staring out the small window of the transport ship. Stars stretched into lines as the hyperdrive engaged, and a part of him felt fear clawing at his chest. What kind of woman was Saren? What would it be like to live with someone who had fought in wars he could barely imagine? When the ship finally arrived at the Zalari capital, Ethan was escorted through glittering halls that seemed alive, glowing softly with bioluminescent panels. Soldiers walked by in precise formations, and the air smelled different, sharp, metallic, and full of energy he had never felt before. Everything was larger than life, from the high ceilings to the massive statues of ancient Zalari leaders. Ethan felt small, insignificant, almost invisible. Then came the first meeting. Saren stood in the center of the chamber, a tall figure in sleek armor that reflected the light of the room. Her eyes were like liquid amber, sharp and calculating, scanning Ethan from head to toe. Her expression was unreadable. For a moment he felt as though she could see into his very soul. "You are Ethan," she said finally, her voice calm but firm. "I was told you are human." "Yes, Commander," Ethan replied, his voice trembling slightly. I am." Saren's lips curved into a faint smile, almost imperceptible. "You look fragile, but perhaps there is steel in you somewhere. We will see." That night, Ethan slept in a room that was far larger than his apartment back on Earth, filled with alien furniture and glowing panels. Sleep came reluctantly. His mind raced with questions about his life, his future, and the strange woman he was to live with. He wondered if she would despise him, mock him, or see him as a burden. In the following days, life with Saren was far from easy. She treated him with strictness, expecting him to learn her ways, understand her world, and respect her authority. Ethan, though nervous, was determined not to fail. He observed quietly, learning about the unique technologies of the Zalari. Their weapons were unlike anything on Earth. Their tools more advanced yet intricate and delicate. One day, while Saren trained with her troops, Ethan was allowed into the forge to help repair damaged armor and machinery. Though he had no combat experience, his hands were steady and clever. He worked with precision, fixing pieces others had given up on. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the hum of machines and the occasional spark from welding. It was during one of these sessions that Saren entered the forge unexpectedly. She leaned against a support beam, watching him move with quiet interest. "I never expected a human to understand our machines so quickly," she said, her voice softer than he had imagined. Ethan looked up, surprised. I just listened to the metal. It tells me what it needs." Her lips twitched into a faint smile. "Perhaps you are not as fragile as you seem." Over the next few weeks, Saren began to include Ethan in more activities. She took him on patrols in her ship, showing him the skies and the strange landscapes of their planets. Ethan learned to pilot small crafts, repair engines, and navigate alien terrains. Each day he grew more confident, and the soldiers who had whispered about his weakness began to notice. Yet not all attention was kind. The Pure Line, a faction of Zalari generals who despised humans and the Union Pact, plotted in shadows. They saw Ethan as a humiliation, an easy target to undermine Saren's authority. Their whispers followed him, their eyes tracking his movements, and their threats were silent but sharp. Ethan, however, refused to be intimidated. He had no training in combat, but he had courage, cleverness, and determination. He began observing patterns, noticing the subtle signs of sabotage and betrayal within Saren's ranks. One evening, he quietly repaired a communication tower that had been tampered with, ensuring messages between loyalists reached Saren without interception. Saren noticed. One night, as they walked along a balcony overlooking the glowing city, she turned to him. "You are not like other humans," she said quietly. "You think clearly, act quickly, and you do not flinch in danger. I respect that." Ethan felt a warmth he had never known. Respect from Saren was more than acceptance, it was trust. And trust in this world of warriors and politics was rare and precious. Then came the Night of Bonds, an annual celebration where interspecies couples displayed unity and loyalty. It was a night meant for festivity, but this year it was also the stage for assassination. Ethan had learned whispers of the Pure Line's plot and knew that danger would strike. Saren urged him to stay hidden, but he refused. "If I am your husband in name, then I will stand beside you in truth," he said. The night arrived with a sky painted in alien hues, stars twinkling between two moons. Soldiers marched, music echoed, and laughter filled the air. Ethan and Saren walked together, their hands brushing lightly, a subtle declaration of unity. Then the attack came. Shadowy figures emerged from the crowd, weapons aimed at Saren. The chamber erupted into chaos. Saren drew her blade with lightning speed, deflecting strikes, moving with precision and grace. Ethan had only a small wrench and a shield he had fashioned in the forge. But he moved alongside her, dodging, striking, and improvising with cleverness. His actions shocked the Zalari. Here was a human, small in stature yet fearless, standing beside their commander, fighting as one. Together they turned the tide. Ethan's quick thinking and unconventional tactics allowed Saren to counter the ambush effectively. Within moments, the assassins lay defeated and silence returned. Saren's eyes were wide as she looked at him, disbelief and admiration mingling. "You fought as one of us," she said, her voice soft. "You are one of us." Ethan felt a surge of pride and relief. For the first time, he did not feel out of place in this alien world. He had proven himself not just to Saren or the soldiers, but to himself, yet the threat was far from over. As they returned to the palace, Ethan realized that the assassination attempt was only the beginning. The Pure Line was larger, more dangerous, and their ambitions extended far beyond him. Saren's position as commander and leader of her people was in jeopardy. That night, Ethan lay awake thinking of the challenges ahead. He was no longer just a human engineer. He was part of something larger, a bond between species that could shape the future of the galaxy. And beside him in the quiet of the room, Saren slept peacefully, her trust in him growing with each passing moment. Ethan knew that the days ahead would test him, push him beyond his limits, and demand courage he had never imagined. But for the first time in his life, he was ready to face it all, not as a simple human, but as a partner, a strategist, and a symbol of hope in a galaxy still healing from war. And so, with stars shining outside the windows and a quiet determination in his heart, Ethan prepared for the battles to come, knowing that his life, and perhaps the future of both humans and Zalari, depended on what he would do next. The morning after the Night of Bonds, the city seemed calm, but Ethan knew better. The Pure Line's attack had failed, but it had revealed the depth of their ambition. They weren't simply rebelling. They were plotting to overthrow Saren entirely, to take control of the government, and to restart the war between humans and Zalari. Saren refused to let him leave despite the council's insistence. "He is my mate under the pact law," she declared before the assembly of leaders. "Harm him and you break the truce. He stands with me." Ethan felt the weight of her words. The council might have feared the political consequences, but the danger from within was still very real. He had never been a fighter, yet here he was, recognized as an essential part of Zalari leadership. And he knew he couldn't turn away, not when lives, including Saren's, depended on him. In the days that followed, Ethan worked tirelessly. He repaired communications, patched up damaged ships, and studied Zalari tactical manuals. He was still human, still small and unarmed compared to soldiers and warriors. But he had learned to observe, calculate, and anticipate moves that others overlooked. His mind became his weapon. Saren trained as usual, commanding her soldiers with precision. but she began to rely on Ethan in ways she had never expected. He suggested strategies, rerouted energy for defense grids, and even helped design traps for the Pure Line. Slowly, her trust in him grew beyond the respect of a commander. It became reliance, a bond forged in necessity and admiration. One night, Ethan discovered a coded transmission from the Pure Line. Hidden within the city's energy network, it outlined a plan to capture Saren at her private estate. Ethan shared it immediately with her. "They want me dead," Saren said quietly, her voice unusually soft. She studied him carefully, as though trying to measure his courage once more. "And you've found this why?" "Because I know how to read the network," Ethan replied simply. "I can stop them if you let me." She nodded, a faint smile crossing her face. "Then we fight together." The following day, the Pure Line made their move. Airships descended over the city, their dark hulls contrasting against the glowing sky. Soldiers loyal to the faction stormed through the streets, shouting orders, breaking barricades, and attempting to cut off communication lines. Chaos erupted almost immediately. Ethan went to the main communication hub, his fingers flying over consoles and panels. He rerouted power, opened emergency channels, and guided loyalist forces to block enemy reinforcements. Each calculation, each decision determined life or death for the people in the city. Meanwhile, Saren led her troops into battle. Her blade was a blur, cutting down opponents with skill born from decades of experience. She moved as though the city itself obeyed her commands. Soldiers who had once doubted Ethan's abilities now watched as their commander and her human worked in tandem, an unbreakable team. The battle reached its climax when the Pure Line leader, General Karath, confronted Saren directly. He was a massive figure, armor gleaming and weapons ready, a veteran rival from her past who had never forgiven her for earlier defeats. "You think your human can save you?" He sneered, his voice booming across the battlefield. Ethan, monitoring energy grids, saw the danger immediately. He redirected power to defensive towers, creating energy barriers that slowed Karath's advance. He coordinated troop movements with precise instructions, his human mind compensating for years of Zalari experience he lacked. Saren faced Karath, her movements swift and precise, but the general was powerful and the fight was fierce. Ethan's guidance from the communication hub allowed reinforcements to arrive at critical moments, turning the battle in their favor. Time and again, the Pure Line found themselves outmaneuvered, their plans disrupted by a human mind no one had taken seriously. In the midst of chaos, Ethan found himself next to Saren on the battlefield. He wielded a small, reinforced tool like a weapon, dodging strikes and distracting opponents long enough for her to counter. Soldiers whispered in awe. This human, small and unarmed by design, fought with courage and cleverness that rivaled the best Zalari warriors. Finally, Karath was cornered. Saren raised her blade for the final strike, but Ethan intervened, guiding a precise energy pulse from a nearby tower that incapacitated the general without killing him. Karath fell, defeated but alive. His ambition ended. As the sun rose over the city, the streets were littered with the aftermath of battle, but victory belonged to Saren, Ethan, and the loyalists who had fought beside them. Citizens cheered as the threat of the Pure Line collapsed, their leaders captured or fled. The truce remained intact, stronger than ever, now cemented not by law, but by courage and unity. In the days following, the council offered to dissolve the Union Pact. Ethan could return to Earth, free from obligations, while Saren continued her leadership. But she refused. She took his hand in front of the council, her voice steady. "The pact may have begun as duty," she said, "but what we built is no law's doing. He is my mate. He is part of this world as I am part of his." Ethan felt warmth and pride at her words. What had started as an obligation had transformed into partnership, trust, and something deeper, something neither of them could have anticipated. He had come as a simple human, but he remained as someone who had helped protect a planet, a commander, and a future that depended on unity. Years passed, and the story of Ethan and Saren became legend. The human who married a Zalari commander 30 years his senior was no longer a joke or a symbol of weakness. He became known as the bonded human, a figure representing courage, intelligence, and the potential for unity between species. Humans and Zalari began learning from them, seeing that true peace did not come from treaties or laws alone. It came from trust, from shared effort and from the willingness to see strength in unexpected places. Children grew up hearing tales of Ethan's clever strategies, his bravery on the battlefield, and Saren's acceptance of him as a true partner. One evening, years later, Ethan and Saren stood together on the balcony of their home overlooking the twin suns. The sky was painted with colors only Zalari worlds could produce, a serene glow after years of conflict. Saren looked down at Ethan, her eyes soft but filled with strength. "You were the only human foolish enough to marry me," she said, her voice carrying warmth and pride. Ethan smiled, feeling the weight of the past years and the peace they had achieved. "Then I'm glad I was the foolish one," he replied. They stood side by side, looking over a world they had saved, a bond that had been tested by war and politics, and a future that shone brightly for humans and Zalari alike. Together they had proven that courage, trust, and love could bridge not just species, but generations, expectations, and worlds. And so, the galaxy remembered them, not as a commander and her human husband, but as a symbol of hope, unity, and the extraordinary potential of humanity. The story of Ethan and Saren was told across planets, inspiring those who had once doubted, teaching those who had feared, and proving that even the most unlikely unions could change the course of history. Their legacy endured through time. Humans who ventured into Zalari space were greeted with respect. Zalari warriors spoke of trust beyond age and species, and everywhere, the name Ethan became synonymous with bravery, cleverness, and the undeniable power of the human spirit. And as the twin suns set, casting long shadows across the city, Saren placed her hand over Ethan's, a quiet gesture of partnership, trust, and love. "We did it together," she whispered. "Yes," Ethan replied, "and we will continue to do so, whatever comes next." The stars shimmered above, vast and eternal, a reminder that even in a galaxy of wonders and dangers, humanity had a place not just as survivors, but as heroes, partners, and beacons of hope. And together, Saren and Ethan looked forward, ready to face whatever the universe could throw at them, knowing they were stronger together than apart.